Federal court has just blocked the bulk of President Trump's sweeping global tariffs from going into effect. The ruling comes from the U.S. Court of International Trade in Manhattan. It's a unique and relatively low-key division of the federal judiciary, but tonight it is flexing its authority in a big way. The three-judge panel ruled in favor of an injunction against the tariffs which have roiled worldwide financial markets in recent months. Unclear right now whether the injunction is temporary or permanent, but the decision has potentially massive political, economic, and legal repercussions. Just moments ago, White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller wrote online, "The judicial coup is out of control." I'm joined now by former federal prosecutor Ellie Honig and former senior advisor to President Obama, David Axelrod. Ellie, is this a judicial coup? What is this court?
No, this is a fully legitimate federal court. I should note, this was a 3-0 opinion. The three judges on this court were appointed by President Reagan, President Obama, and President Trump. So I don't know where they're getting this coup language from. This is a huge setback for Trump and his administration. As big a deal as the tariffs were, this is as big a deal in the opposite direction. It essentially pauses, for now, rules illegal and unconstitutional almost all of the tariffs that have been in place. And the core of the ruling is this. Typically, it is Congress that controls the tariff power. However, Congress can pass laws giving that power to the president in certain instances. They did that years ago in a statute called the IEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. Trump then declared, okay, we are in an international economic emergency because of our trade deficits, because of other economic worldwide factors. And this court unanimously 3-0 said that is not an economic emergency. That is not what the law means. Having trade deficits, which we've had for 49 years continuously, that is not an economic emergency and has now struck down for the time being all of those tariffs that were put in place on Trump's first day and then on quote-unquote Liberation Day, April 2nd.
David, I mean, how much of a black eye is this for the administration?
Well, Trump loves tariffs. We know that. He thinks it's a cure-all for all of America's problems. It will, raise revenues. It'll bring jobs flowing back here, manufacturing jobs. It will restore American respect and balance in the way, all of this. But, in a weird way, I mean, in the short run, I think it creates a lot of havoc because everyone's trying to figure out when this, in the long run, it could save him from himself because these tariffs are bad economic policy, and these tariffs could raise costs on Americans. They're already starting to, so if the result of it is he's stymied in doing something that's going to raise costs for people, it may be a black eye, but it may also be a break for him.
Just legally, what's the recourse for the White House here?
So like any other federal case, this will be appealed. I think the first thing the White House is going to do is ask the Court of Appeals, which in this case is called the Federal Circuit. Usually the circuits are 1st through 11th. This is separate. They're going to ask the Federal Circuit, first of all, to block this ruling, essentially to unblock the tariffs. Then the White House is going to appeal to the Federal Circuit, which again functions as that mid-level Court of Appeals. And then whoever loses there, I think, is very likely to appeal up to the U.S. Supreme Court. This could wind up in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. Look, I think this, if we look at the recent U.S. Supreme Court opinions, they've been skeptical of these sort of dramatic invocations by the administration. As one example, the Supreme Court has found that the Alien Enemies Act, this does not involve an invasion or an incursion. So I think there's some skepticism there towards this sort of tendency the administration has of calling everything an emergency, everything an attack, everything an incursion, rebellion, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what we know is that Trump is not a great respecter of rules and laws and norms and institutions, doesn't want to be constrained, wants to expand the power of the executive, and declaring these emergencies has given him the legal pretext to do it. And now this is being challenged on a lot of different fronts. So there are long-term implications for it.
It also, I mean, it certainly throws a monkey wrench into any negotiations that are going on between the U.S. and other countries. I mean, do those continue during a period like this?
Yeah, I think that's a very big question. I don't know how you negotiate if you don't know. Maybe, I just don't know. And I think that's one of the reasons why this is going to throw the whole trade picture into kind of havoc in the next few weeks.
So, Ellie, do tariffs remain in place right now?
Most of them, no. Most of them are now suspended. So the opinion specifies 3 categories of tariffs that are now declared illegal. The trafficking tariffs, which were declared on the first day, January 20th, directed primarily at Canada and Mexico and at China. Those numbers have shifted, but Canada, Mexico, China, those are now on hold. Those are now struck down. Also, The so-called worldwide and retaliatory tariffs, those were the ones announced on April 2nd on so-called Liberation Day. The 10% on everyone that Trump announced that day, the 11 to 50% that was imposed on other countries, and the retaliatory tariffs on China. So all of those categories, they're all on hold.
The tariffs that have already been collected?
Right. Oh, that's a great question. Do they go back? I don't know the answer to that. I think if this ultimately gets... No, it's good. I would imagine that if this ultimately gets struck down, if it goes all the way up to the Supreme Court, then there could be an action brought by those other countries to recover. I mean, it would be money wrongly paid, according to this ruling that just came down.
Ellie Honig, David Axelrod, thanks very much.
Markets are jumping in after hours trading on that news that a court has halted Trump's, quote, Liberation Day tariffs temporarily. Dow futures rising immediately on the news by more than 1.1%, 500 points, about 1.5% for the S&P 500, even more than that for the NASDAQ. The bulk of Trump's tariffs now paused by a court. Now, this is a 3-judge panel, as I said, a temporary pause, ruling Trump does not have the authority to impose the tariffs. Paula Reed is out front. Now, Paula, when we look at all of what's been going on with these tariffs, this is an outcome that many had not anticipated. A court getting in and saying Trump can't even do this to begin with. So what can you tell us about this ruling?
Well, we've seen across the country, Aaron, various courts blocking Trump's policies, but this is one of the first times we have seen a court blocking his ability to impose these global tariffs. Now, this particular lawsuit, this was brought by a legal advocacy group that represents small businesses and claimed that they had been severely harmed by these tariffs. And here, this is a very low-profile court. As you noted, at the U.S. Court of International Trade, they ruled in favor of a permanent injunction. So this is a permanent, it's temporary, but it lasts until this case moves on. Injunction. So this is effectively grounds Trump's tariffs to a halt. So this is incredibly significant because we know that he uses these tariffs as a key part of his international trade so-called deals and policies. So to have this court block this with a preliminary injunction, this is surprising. And as you noted, this is going to have an impact not only on his policies, but on global markets. Now, we have also seen the administration rail against the fact that any courts can block policies put forth by the administration. So we are waiting for comment from the Justice Department, from the White House in response to this enormous decision.
All right, Paula, thank you very much. Let's go straight to Ryan Goodman, just joining us on the phone as this news broke. So, Ryan, you heard Paula say, it's a court, the Court of International Trade, that many would not have heard of prior to tonight, coming out and in unexpected fashion and ending the tariffs for now. How significant is this ruling?
It's very significant. The court at the end of the ruling says we're not just ruling for this plaintiff, but we're basically ruling for everybody that would be covered by the tariffs. There are other cases that have been brought to the same court. So it's in a sense ruling for all of those cases as well by saying that the tariffs are not legal. And in some ways, the court's argument basically says this goes back to Congress. It boils down to the idea that there was always a poor fit for the tariffs being invoked by the administration because the administration says they were operating under this Emergency National Security Act, and the court says, no, you aren't, that the National Security Act was not built for something like this. It's really Congress's authority to give it to you, and you don't have it yet. So it really means that the White House has to go to Congress unless, of course, they can get this ruling overturned.
Okay, so can you walk through, though, the timing of all of this? I mean, we're in a situation where, this is a seismic shift. So what happens now, I guess, in terms of how long it would take to have this actually work its way through the court, or where do things go from the Court of International Trade? What's the timeline and process here?
Given the dramatic global implications, the administration in all likelihood will first ask the court itself just to put a pause on its own ruling. Yes, the ruling is one that is a permanent ruling. It's like its final decision, but they can ask the court, can you just pause it while we appeal? This is one of these rare situations in which the court itself, even though it ruled against the administration, might say, okay, we'll pause our ruling so you can appeal it. If they don't do that, then the administration will appeal it one step up to the First Circuit, and then the question becomes whether or not that Court of Appeals will stop this ruling from going into effect while they decide whether or not they want to overturn it. So we might get a pause quite quickly, which will obviously jolt everything back into place as it was before this ruling. But it's anybody's guess as to how that's going to go.
All right. Well, a very, very significant moment. Thank you so much, Ryan Goodman, as we try to digest the importance of that in this moment as stocks are jumping right now.